When I was in high school, we were sitting around the dinner table and I announced to my family I wanted to go to UCLA. Without any hesitation, my father asked what, to be the lunch lady? So he's one of my biggest supporters. And it turned out he wasn't trying to be negative, he just wanted what was best for me. And he genuinely wanted to know how I thought I would get into UCLA, which is a bit of a reality check. So I had a lot of time to think as I sat on the side of the tub contemplating why what he had said had affected me so much. I wasn't sad, I was just frustrated. That was close to 20 years ago, and someone in my family always seems to be bringing it up. It's been a constant source of motivation for me. Unfortunately, it was a little late to prove my family wrong and go to UCLA, but I was determined to prove that I can make something of myself. So in the 90s, a company called Pixar started making a big name for themselves in the world of animation, and it caught my attention. The release of Monsters, Inc. had me captivated. I became engrossed in how it was made, how the fur moved, the lip syncing, the colors. I just needed to know. So I went to my local Barnes & Noble, and I bought every book I can afford on computer animation. And when I didn't have any more money, I would sit there in the store taking notes for fun. And I was taking notes for fun. So this is how I knew I discovered a discipline that really interested me. I was also a huge fan of CSI and forensic files. So I could totally see myself working in a high-tech lab creating reenactments of crime scenes. But my sister frequently reminded me that it wasn't like how it was on TV. And I'm also not entirely sure I'd be able to sleep at night. Either way, I knew this was a world I wanted to pursue professionally. And I wanted to make graphics, not layouts for magazines, but motion graphics. I found a school in Florida. It was a technical school called Full Sail Real World Education. I told my parents this is where I wanted to go, and immediately was met with a no because it was a 2-year associate's rather than a 4-year bachelor's. It also had an intense and accelerated class program. It's about a semester's worth of work squeezed into a month, and it was 6 days a week, 8 hours plus a day, no Christmas break, no summer break, just straight through learning. I had my heart set on it though, so I made a PowerPoint presentation on why this is the best school for me. My parents finally broke down and said yes, under the condition that once I graduated, I was on my own and there would be no financial support if I couldn't get a real job. Fast forward today, I've been a motion graphics designer for over 13 years, and my family and friends still don't completely understand what I do. According to them, I color or surf the internet all day. It's been quite a journey, and it hasn't always been easy. There have been many challenges along the way, and I still find myself learning how best to navigate within the industry. There are a number of lessons I've learned, and I want to share a couple of them with you today. Utilize your resources and simultaneously make opportunities for yourself. When I was looking for jobs, I applied far and wide. I still wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to end up in the field, so I cast a really broad net. At this point, I remember being very uncertain about my future, so I talked to one of my professors, and being close to EA Games in Orlando, he set me up with a couple people there to make video games. While it was a valuable experience, I don't think I wanted to do that for 30 plus years, so I kind of eliminated that from my scope. On the side, the same professor was also an animator for a courtroom. So I thought that was really interesting, and I gave it a try. The graphics work in this field required the ability to build an exact representation of the details provided. It lacked any imagination or creativity, so I also took this line of work off as well. I came back to Connecticut after I graduated, and I called a few local animation studios around here. I just graduated, and they asked if I had any time for me to come in and to observe what they did. In most cases, they were super pumped, and they said, yeah, come on down. And hopefully, I was thinking maybe it would lead to a potential job. So while shadowing some various studios, I continued to apply for a paying position. This process opened the door to my first job, but it also allowed me to look behind the curtains and really discover a field that interested me, which turned out to be broadcast. Blazing your own path can be uncomfortable at times. I've had a lot of negative thoughts along the way and moments of self-doubt. But a foundational belief in my passions has helped me power past any pessimism. In school, I was repeatedly told computer animation was a male-dominated industry. In my class of over 250 students, there are 7 females. My first internship, there is 1 female, me. My department today has almost 40 people in it, and there's a handful of ladies, and I share a small office with 4 other guys. So despite these gender-related odds, which is kind of cool to see so many females here today, I was the only student at Full Sail to earn a perfect attendance award and an award for fundamentals of logo animation. My internship led me to my current role, and there I have won 2 Emmys for studio and package design. In school, I would catch myself saying, maybe I shouldn't be here, maybe this isn't for me. I thought everyone knew more than I did. Every time someone answered a question, I thought to myself, why didn't I raise my hand? I knew the answer to that. We started taking drawing classes, and I remember thinking, I can't do this, I'm not a drawer. How am I supposed to be a designer if I can't draw what I want to design? The reality is, college is what you make of it. Don't squander your time. You're surrounded by educators and peers, and you can constantly be learning from them if you choose to. I want to stress the importance of keeping an open mind and believing in your abilities. So, I didn't think I can draw, and these are samples of my first ever colored pencil, and watercolor. So I just want to show you that don't think that you can't, because you haven't tried. So just go out there and learn how to do it. So whether you're currently in high school or college, the message is the same. Don't get caught up at focusing on what other people think. Be yourself and trust your instincts. Design is everywhere. Some of it's good and some of it's bad. As I began to recognize some of the less than impressive work out there, I started to believe in my own skills, but I also realized that I needed to find outlets to start building my own perspective. I started designing business cards and logos for friends. Since then, I have expanded my skill set and my network, and I have built brand identities, websites, designed posters, album covers, t-shirts, patches. A lot of people are looking for design work, and most of the time they don't know where to go. Use that to your advantage. If you don't feel comfortable charging at first, barter or do it for fun. It's a perfect way to build your skill set and your network. So being green and new to the workforce, you're not expected to know everything. You are expected to be eager and willing to learn. Those are traits that are going to help get you hired. Many companies would love to take someone who doesn't know much, but is eager and hungry to learn, over someone who is complacent and thinks that they know everything. With that being said, once you've been hired, it's important to stay motivated, even in between projects. So leading up to the 2016 Rio Games, I heard some of the designers on the lead team talking about their need for an animated character set. So during some of my downtime, I started working on one because I wanted to help and I wanted to keep growing. So this is an example of an animated character set. I don't know if you guys ever watched the Olympics, but the Rio Games, the Summer Games, were really playful and fun. So they wanted something that kind of went along with it. And this wasn't even a request, it's just something I did in my spare time. And it ended up being in over half the package. It was in all of our interstitials. And they kind of introduce, in this case, countries. So we have a couple of different looks, and each country had its own little kind of abbreviation, a little animation. And then this is a simplified version of the character set. And it was even in some of our coming ups. So people use this everywhere. And then, so I also made widgets during the Olympics. I had some downtime, we weren't super busy, and working crazy hours, I needed to stay awake. So we had no fun ways to display speed, feet, distance, and this package, we had so many fun patterns and colors, so why not use them to their full potential? So I made these, and to give you an example of how we used it, this is, we call it a Viz element, and it basically describes the diving tower. And usually while this is airing on TV, there's an announcer speaking over it, kind of giving you all the details. So also, if you don't have a full schedule, take advantage of all the programs at your fingertips. If the programs are in front of you and free to access, learn them. Find tutorials, dissect someone's project. Technology is always changing. There will always be another program, and to stay relevant in this industry, you can't stop learning. Not every project you create will be gold star refrigerator material. I work in broadcast. In my industry, there are quick turnarounds and tight budgets. You don't have the luxury of spending a long period of time on one graphic. So back in 2011, do you guys know what Deadspin is? It's kind of like a sports and media blog. So I thought this was going to be my first big project. I did everything myself. I modeled it, I lit, textured, animated it, and the idea was to show drafting on cyclists during the Tour de France. And I was so proud of this project. Come to find out, the next day after it aired, it ended up on Deadspin, and everyone made fun of it. I'm still proud of this. This is like my 5 minutes of fame here. You'll have multiple people who want to put their 2 cents into everything that you guys do. You need to be able to handle critiques and not be offended. Listen to it. Try to find the reason behind what the person is saying. Long term, it's going to make you a better designer. With each design, you're putting yourself out there. They're your inner thoughts and feelings, and you're putting them down on paper or creating them digitally. And now they're open to judgment. You can't make everyone happy. When designing, you need to think that you need to make what makes you happy and what has feeling. Don't hold back and just go for it. You have to believe in yourself to sell some of your ideas. So I have an art director who I often have to show my designs to. After presenting, he always asks, well, what do you think? That's his first response. And I've worked with him long enough to know I have to be confident in whatever I'm trying to sell him. If there's any hesitation in how I respond, it's back to the drawing board. But if I say this is the best way to express X, Y, and Z, and here's why, it's usually a concept that reaches fruition as a successful design. Inspiration, it comes everywhere. Keep a running log. I can't stress that enough. There are so many ways to keep an ongoing log, and it's going to come in handy. I can't tell you how many times every project I get, every new design I have to make, I pull from my huge log that I have. With that, I want to transition into a project I created last year. I think it'd be interesting to show you the process from concept to completion. Each design is a new challenge, and you're there to solve a problem. For this particular project, I was asked to be the lead designer and rebrand the Notre Dame football package. My first challenge was how conservative Notre Dame has been in past years. They have very strict guidelines on how they want to be represented. My mission was to stretch the boundaries and push them out of their comfort zone while staying within the budget, which is another challenge. The budget is one of those nuances that affect the final project. It tells you how many hours you can spend on your design. So while brainstorming your ideas, you have to keep that in mind. So the first thing I do is research. I research what other big networks have done in their college football packages, why they were successful, why they weren't successful. I ask myself, what are the latest trends and ideas? So I made a little presentation and that I had to show to the producers. I use ESPN, CBS, Fox, and TBS. And then I went back to my inspiration file. I started pulling images of colors, textures, ideas that interest me. I write down words that evoke college football: youth, playful, bright colors, locker room, team. I open them up and see how I can make a graphics package out of all of this. So this is the mood board that I used. And I looked at the words, the shapes, the colors. I see how they can interact with each other. I find similarities and I grow upon each shape. When I get stuck, I go talk with my art director and we just riff back and forth. Having people to talk to creates so many more options. In the broadcast world, you have to think long term too. Like, what idea has the most legs that year after year you can keep adding to the package but maintain a consistent look? Because unfortunately, every year you can't do a new package. There's no budget for it, there's no time for it. So you have to think years to come, what can I do to maintain this? So you find your design, you break it down, and you put it back together again to make sure it has the ability to hold up. Next, you sketch. You get your ideas down on paper. As you can see, my concerns that I had back in college about my drawing abilities haven't held me back in my current role. Along the way, I try to simplify, make it a little more abstract instead of so literal. I was using lockers, so I turned to plain cubes. Now it's just a cube. Like, what's so special about this cube? So I go and I look up examples of cubes. Do I want it to open like a suitcase? Do I want it to open from one side, all sides? I sit with another designer at this point. He comes on board to start helping me, and he's going to be doing the 3D for the project. I show him my crude sketches and my ideas for what I want this cube to be. He starts playing and figuring out a way to make this process of versioning each one as painless as possible. And when I say versioning, you're going to have to do this for every team that Notre Dame plays, this year, next year, the year after. So I go back to my producer with style frames and a more developed idea. I show him there are endless possibilities, and we aren't backing ourselves into a corner. We go back and forth with producers. We push the boundaries. Sometimes they rein us in, but we have to try. We are able to send them samples with animation. From there, we quickly start riffing off of our current approvals and are able to put together a new graphics package. So this is our first animation. And basically, the designer who was doing the 3D wanted to see how the logos were going to map, how the patterns were going to work, how's the lighting, how is our network logo going to look on these spinning cubes? Is it too much? So let's see. I put together a sizzle reel of some of my favorite elements from the package. While you're watching, also listen to the sound design. I got to work with an out-of-house recording studio, and it was a really cool experience. I sent them samples from the Transformers and Iron Man because I wanted these cubes to feel really heavy when they fell and moved into place. So this is where we ended. So that's kind of the whole Notre Dame package, or some of my favorite elements. And you can tell we used, there's some different teams in there to give you an idea of how a red team would look, how a blue team would look. Georgia was their first matchup, so I ended up using them for a lot of examples. But it was a really fun project, and this is one of the longer ones we get to work on. This was about maybe 2 to 3 months of work. The Olympics that we work on is definitely by far the heaviest build, and that we have designers who are already working on the next Olympics, and we'll have people slowly start joining them. But in this field, you don't have a long period of time to work on one graphic. There's always a new sporting event on TV, so you're constantly building and moving on, which is kind of nice if you don't like being stuck on one thing for too long. That's what I really enjoy about it. It's also really cool to work in a team. So I got to work with another designer who was really awesome, and with his technical capabilities, we were able to map tons of different logos and patterns on TV, and this is the first package we had that was kind of what we were doing here. So I just want to leave you with this. I love what I do, and I feel really fortunate that I get to go to work every day. No one has it all figured out, but we're working on it and continuously getting better. Don't forget why you started. Not every project is going to be fun. Sometimes it's a grind, but to see the finished project is such an accomplishment. And in my case, if you go to a bar with friends and you're watching a football game, it's really cool to be like, I did that, I made that. So, thank you.